and I opened it and I saw my birth mum's handwriting for the first time. Handwriting that I realized, oh, like she wanted to write as well. Celina Lei. My name is Winnie Dunn. I'm the author of Dirt Poor Islanders and the general manager of Sweatshop Western Sydney Literacy Movement. I'm Tongan Australian and I come from the suburbs of Mount Druitt and Fairfield here in Western Sydney.
Cool. And can you tell us in your own words about the book, Dirt Poor Islanders?
Yeah, so Dirt Poor Islanders is a work of autobiographical fiction. So it's fiction based on my lived experiences, and it follows, it's a coming of age novel, and it follows a young protagonist named Meadow Reed, who's trying to find and put together the many parts of herself, because she has a broken culture identity and a broken family identity and a broken class identity. And so it's about how she kind of brings that all together through the lens of a Tongan concept that we have, a familial structure that we have, where we don't have a word for grandmother or aunt. Everyone's just your mum. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah, and so when you consider that Meadow Reed's mum died when she was quite young, and having these kind of broken pieces, how does she kind of put that all together and learn not only to love her culture but herself as well?
Yeah, I'm really curious because, this work, so much of it is drawn from your own lived experience and your, I guess, sense of identity and family and cultural connections. So why did you sort of feel the need to create another fictional character to tell the story rather than writing perhaps a memoir?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm a creative writer, and I think it's a craft and a skill that people need to learn, like just as much as kind of a surgeon needs to learn how to do surgeries. I think a creative writer needs to learn how to do their craft. And then with fiction, for me, one, it's the freedom of fiction, because it allows you to play more with time and experiences and characters. But also, I just believe that everything is a form of fiction. Even the memories that we have and we construct for ourselves is still, through our own lens and through our own way of interpreting things. And so we tell ourselves stories all the time. And
Yeah.
so for me, it wasn't a question of fiction or memoir. It was a question of how well can I write a piece of fiction, because at the end of the day, for me, everything is based on your own experiences. And I think people often have this, what would you call it, a myth about writing where it's this endless form of imagination. You can jump into anybody's shoes, you can take from wherever, as long as you kind of do the research. But a great example of why that doesn't work and how that can be quite a damaging stereotype to have about storytelling is Chris Lilly's Jonah from Tonga and Summer Heights High. So we all know he's an Anglo-Saxon comedian who put on brown face paint and an afro wig and a thick Pacific Islander accent, whatever that is, and played this really racist, homophobic, violent depictions of a Tongan child. I think people often forget he was playing a young high school boy. And you'll see in a lot of interviews that Chris Lilly does about that show and that character, is that he went and he did a lot of research. He went to high schools and he hung out with young Pacifica boys and he just copied their mannerisms. And so his whole reasoning as to why he did that brown face character is because it was just true to his research and what he experienced. But, you know, as an actual Tongan Australian, I only ever saw Jonah from Tonga and Summer Heights High empower men, especially that looked like Chris Lilly. You know, I have this really formative moment where, because Summer Heights High was the most popular show on TV when I was in high school, and I have this really formative moment when I walked in through my high school gates. I was in year 7, and there was this, you know, like this popular boy in my year with blonde hair and blue eyes, who was all of a sudden walking around with a ukulele and wearing a sarong, or what we call a tupeno, and he was literally quoting Jonah from Summer Heights High. Wow. And so even, you know, for me, we have to acknowledge that, one, fiction is everything. It's our memories, it's how we tell stories, it's and our imagination is only ever based on our own lived experiences.
Very true, and I think you gave this really beautiful explanation about what really prompted you to kind of tell these stories from a very authentic perspective, and I think that's really important and beautiful, and sometimes courageous as well, to kind of, you know, work against certain stereotypes and stigma. And perhaps that might have not been your main intention of writing the book, but it certainly has been one of the impacts of it.
Oh yeah, thanks so much, Celina. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, because Dirtpool Islanders is kind of the first mainstream novel that's been published in Australia, written by a Tongan Australian, you know, about the Tongan Australian experience. When I was writing, it did feel like, oh, is this just me trying to, you know, respond to the damages that, you know, stereotypes that, you know, Chris Lilly presented, you know, and others like him, you know, about my community, you know, is that all I'm doing? But I hope when readers, you know, open Dirtpool Islanders, they can also see how I tried to set up the Pacific culture and the Pacific family and the Pacific Australian life as its kind of own literary canon. So I've had a lot of readers tell me that the first half of the book can be quite boring because it's really just a mapping of Meadows' house and moving through each room and kind of moving through each family member and how she's connected to them. But for me, because there was no other Tongan Australian novel, I really had to do a lot of world building and a lot of foundational work in order to let her kind of coming of age narrative, you know, really, you know, take flight. And, you know, near the end of the book, when she goes on this kind of trip to her motherland, Tonga, and with her auntie, you know, all of that stuff couldn't happen without that kind of foundational work at the beginning.
Absolutely. And we've touched upon this question I was going to ask a little bit, but I was wondering perhaps you can distill down for me the reason that you write.
Yeah, the reason that I write. I take a lot of inspiration from the African-American feminist and scholar Bell Hooks, who I learned about during my time at Sweatshop Literacy Movement, and, you know, our organisation is based on her argument that freedom and justice in any culture can only be, you know, achieved or obtained through reading, writing, and critical thinking. So another argument of Bell Hooks, which can be quite confronting when I say it to people, but I think it's important, is that she often talks about this writing spirit and this kind of ethereal, kind of divine quality of writing that real writers don't necessarily choose, but it chooses them, if that makes sense. So when I was very young, I think like I remember when I was very young, he saw me kind of staring at the back of this toilet paper packet for ages. Like, I was just so engrossed in it. It was like the TV. I was just so enamored with it. And he couldn't understand why this baby was so fascinated by the toilet paper. He was like, is it because of the plastic? Is it because of the thing inside? Like, does she want to open it? So he just watched me for a while. And, you know, like, my dad is, like, muscly and brown and bald, so, like, he looks like The Rock. And so, you know, you can tell by kind of that comparison, you know, he's very much a man of physical labor and hard work. And so I didn't grow up with any kind of books in the house. So he was watching me stare at the back of this toilet paper, trying to figure out why I was so engrossed in it. And then he slowly started to realize that I was trying to read the words on the back of the packet. And I was just so drawn to language and to letters and to words that I can't really explain why I write.
Calling.
Yeah, any other way. And I know that sounds a bit like woohoo, but it's just, I think, the truth that just there's this thing that chooses you sometimes. And for a long time, because I was the only person in my family who loved reading and who loved writing stories, and to this day, that's still very true. I didn't know where I got this love of language and storytelling from until I was an adult. And I found out that my grandmother was before she passed away, she was known in the community as a bunake. So a bunake in Tongan is like a songstress or a poet. And she would kind of write. And I knew this about her, but it's just nice to have a language about it. She would write her own songs that she would get the family to learn and sing together. And then she would write her own kind of private poetry, you know, that was kind of very ethereal, in the sense that she would often write about, you know, her faith and her culture. But so knowing that as an adult, you know, after she passed away, was very profound for me. And another very profound moment that, you know, still gets me to this day is my own birth mother passed away when I was 4. And when I moved out of home 5 years ago, my dad gave me a box of her old stuff. And then inside this box was this red kind of pleather diary with the year 1995 like printed in gold lettering. And I opened it and I saw my birth mum's handwriting for the first time.
Wow.
In the year I was born, she filled out every single day with, you know, just recount of what she did and what she was thinking and what she was feeling, you know, while she was pregnant with her first child, and you know, having these new experiences. And it was then when I was kind of looking at her very loopy handwriting that I realized, oh, like, she wanted to write as well, and she just never kind of got the chance to explore that further than a diary before she passed away. And so yeah, I think, you know, having, you know, knowing that my birth mum, you know, was a writer and my grandmother was a poet, I think really gives me an understanding as to why I became a writer.
Yeah, that must have been such an intimate moment, and I literally got goosebumps just hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was like, it felt like a miracle. I'll say that much.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, with all of your work, you're so involved in the literary field, and you also help other writers pursue kind of their writing dreams and help them build writing skills. I was wondering, what is your one piece of advice for other writers?
Yeah, write like it's a profession. Like, study it, learn it, take feedback from mentors and teachers and your peers, study every single form, know what an extended metaphor is and a long metaphor is, and a broken metaphor is, you know, before you know, write a metaphor, and choose one, and then choose to break the conventions. You kind of have to know the rules in order to break them. And so for me, you know, if you treat writing not like it's this, I don't know how else to put it, but this fun little quirky thing that you get to do, but if you take it very seriously, and you respect the craft, it'll respect you in turn, I think.
Do you have any advice on what's the best approach in terms of learning the craft? Because if we, try and just learn about the grammar stuff, it can be really dry and
No,
people
of
might not
course.
be that motivated. But is
Yeah.
there like something
It,
you do?
it's different for everyone. So some people really like the tertiary setting and going to university and doing a course. Some people really like going to their, National Writers Centre, and doing courses through them. Some people like finding out as they go. Not the path I would recommend, but some people like that. But for me, it's about kind of finding your group and your community, because the West kind of treats writers as these solitary creatures in a cave who just write and don't talk to anyone about it and just come out blazing with amazing stories. But actually being a great writer is being in a community like Sweatshop Literacy Movement, for example, where you're learning different cultural perspectives and different cultural methods of storytelling, and you're learning from feedback from other people who are your peers who are trying to write, and then building up your skills and your knowledge set from there. And so if anything, I would say having a trusted mentor, finding one, or finding a trusted editor that has the skills and the knowledge set and is willing to pass it on, is for me the most natural way, I think, to go about learning something, because that's how we've been doing it since time began, is that we had somebody more knowledgeable than us kind of pass the torch or pass the knowledge down, and then and my hope is for me is that I take the skills that I learned and the opportunities that I gained, and I pass it on to the next person, and to kind of keep that tradition of learning going.